Good morning, Dan and Amy. And, this was a surprising op-ed in the Wall Street Journal from Elaine Luria. She is a Democrat who represents Virginia's 2nd Congressional District. But she retired as a commander after 20 years in the U.S. Navy, and she asks the question and answers it. Does the Pentagon take China seriously? She is critical of the Biden administration's divest to invest strategy that she essentially argues has America less equipped to meet the challenge of Chinese communist aggression as opposed to more equipped. She notes in 2010, the U.S. Navy had 68 more ships than the Chinese Navy. Today, it has 63 fewer. That's a swing of 131 ships in a decade. Combat aircraft procurement is down 22% from 2021. She's looking at the DoD budget for the coming fiscal year. Ammunition procurement down 40%, with China now having the world's 3rd largest air force. And she also questions General Milley's assessment of the Chinese communist threat as it pertains to Taiwan. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's busy reading tracts from Ibram Kendi and Robin DiAngelo. I think the probability is probably low in the immediate or near term that China would invade Taiwan, although Admiral John Aquilino, who's the Pacific Combatant Commander, testified before Congress that China could be prepared to take Taiwan by force in the next 6 years, saying, we've seen things that I don't think we expected, and that's why I continue to talk about a sense of urgency with respect to Taiwan vis-a-vis China. By the way, maybe foreshadowing was China's treatment of Hong Kong over the past several years, including most recently with shutting down Jimmy Lai's newspaper, Apple Daily. So they talk seriously, but are we marshaling the necessary resources to be serious? Let's put that question to our friend Cliff May, president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and foreign affairs columnist for the Washington Times. Cliff, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
What about Congressman Luria's observations, the disconnect between the rhetoric and the numbers in the DoD budget?
I give her a lot of credit. I mean, her military background obviously helps. I think she's looking at all of these things with a very clear eye. And I hope there will be more concern both on the Republican and Democratic side for the direction we're going vis-a-vis China and vis-a-vis such things as critical race theory, which I think is just very, very dangerous here at home.
Before we get to CRT, just a little bit more on China with President Xi sort of ramping up his rhetoric of late, too. How should we interpret that?
Well, he is very ambitious and very bellicose. He's the most powerful leader of the Chinese Communist Party and ruler of China and its possessions, such as Xinjiang, which is where the Uyghurs, a Turkic Muslim minority, live and are seriously mistreated. Both this administration, Biden administration, and the Trump administration has said that the treatment of the Uyghurs is tantamount to genocide. That's how bad it is. His speech celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party was threatening towards others, and he didn't mention all the terrible things that have happened over those 100 years: the Cultural Revolution, the Great Famine, the terrible things that have happened within China. Now China has become much, much richer. In the early 1970s, when Kissinger and Nixon went to China and established good relations and said, we're going to help you develop economically. They were later brought into the World Trade Organization, given special privileges as a developing nation within that. But they've also been the world's leading thief of intellectual property. Not just volumes, but libraries. Billions of dollars worth of American intellectual property have been stolen and still are being stolen. And I think until the Trump administration, we didn't have a realistic assessment of China. I think the predominant view on the right and the left was that as China gets richer, it'll get more moderate and more liberal. Hasn't happened under Xi. It's become more bellicose than ever. It wants hegemony in Asia, but it wants more than that eventually. And it sees itself as a competitor and not a friendly competitor to the United States.
Well, do you think President Xi is secretly smiling because of COVID? It destroyed America's economy?
here's what I think about that. I don't believe. Look, it is not just coincidence. I think that COVID emerged out of Wuhan, where China has its most important laboratory that works on bat viruses. That's like saying there was a sudden flood of chocolate out of Hershey, Pennsylvania. What a coincidence that is. Couldn't have anything to do with the chocolate manufacturer there. I don't know that they plan to get it out, although the military was working at this laboratory. So the possibility that they were working on this virus to make it into a weapon that they might use at some point cannot be ruled out. If you look at the kinds of research they were doing, I think it's more likely that it leaked out because of incompetence and carelessness. The Chinese, I think, could have, and maybe this was incompetence, maybe not, kept it within Wuhan and kept it within China. They may have thought, if we're going to suffer, the rest of the world should suffer too, that we do not need this disadvantage. They have not been transparent. They have not been helpful. They have been in control of the World Health Organization for years, which America pays huge amounts of money for. And so the World Health Organization did not do its job. And millions of people around the world and hundreds of thousands of people in America are dead as a result. Many economies around the world are decimated. And the Chinese are celebrating right now the anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party and saying such crazy things as, we don't know where this virus originated. Maybe it came from the U.S. Army.
Right.
Maybe it came from Australia in meats. We have no idea.
Well, General Mark Milley, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as well as Admiral Michael Gilday, who's Chief of Naval Operations, they don't have a lot of time to devote to the Chinese Communists because they're busy trying to understand white rage.
Well, that is a huge problem as well. As you know, General Milley was testifying before Congress. He was questioned by people like Representative Mike Wallace, a former Green Beret, about what they had been hearing from cadets and from soldiers, which is the pushing of this critical race theory, not examining it in an intellectual fashion, but the pushing of it on cadets at West Point and on soldiers out there. And it is an extraordinarily divisive ideology. It is not, as you will read in a lot of the press, an analytical tool. It is not, as you will read, just an academic concept. Critical race theory is based on critical theory. Critical theory gave rise to Nazism and to Marxism. And it's pretty easy to understand the different variants, because what you have is Marxist theory focuses on class. You got the proletariat, the workers, and they're oppressed by the bourgeois, by the capitalists, by the employers. That's the world they see. The Nazis, you've got the Jews, and they have to be destroyed because they are a poison to white people, to Aryans, to Germans. That's Nazism. And then you have critical race theory, which says, well, there are people of color and there are white people, and the white people are and always have and will continue to oppress the people of color, and so the white people must submit, must repent, must understand their place, and it goes beyond that. There's a guy, I think you may have mentioned him, Ibram X. Kendi, and he is a critical race theorist, one of the leading ones, and he has been very clear that the only remedy, and I'm quoting him now, the only remedy to racial discrimination is what he calls anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. In other words, what he's saying is we need to establish discrimination against white people by people of color. What's also crazy about this, what is a white person, for goodness sake? A Swede is white, a Greek is white, a Chechen is white, an Iranian is white. Are they really all of one identity, one group? And what does it mean, people of color? Who's the people? You could have African ancestry, Latin American ancestry, which may mean you're of Italian background in Argentina, Asian, Arab. These are very strange and odd concepts to pretend that they really make sense. And you mentioned the idea of white rage, the idea that if you have pale skin, you're susceptible to anger and rage that is uncontrollable. All of this is nonsense, pseudo-academic, but it is being taught on our college campuses and increasingly K through 12 as well.
I wanted to address another potential national security topic with you, and that is the trials and tribulations of one Hunter Biden. More emails, text messages recovered from the computer that was left at this Delaware computer shop, apparently. And among other things, a text in 2019 to his daughter, Hunter's daughter, Naomi. I hope you can do what I did and pay everything for this entire family for 30 years. It's really hard, but don't worry. Unlike Pop, Joe, I won't make you give me half your salary. So, Hunter and the big guy, if Hunter was, as these text messages, and there's more emails that suggest he was paying for maintenance and upkeep of the big guy's compound there in Delaware, if he's getting funded by Ukrainian oligarchs and Chinese communists, I don't, the timing of all this is not clear where his money was coming from at what particular time, but we know Ukrainian oligarchs at minimum, and then the Chinese communists, Rosemont Seneca partners. If that money is going to him and then it is winding up benefiting the big guy, then don't we have at least some questions to ask about exactly what these business arrangements are and how the big guy, now the President of the United States, benefits?
You would think so. And what's really startling to me as somebody who, spent decades as a full-time journalist is how the mainstream media has no interest in knowing the truth of the story, no interest in investigating it. They really just prefer not to know. They don't think the people have a right to know. They're just tuning this out. It's really, and that it's a terrible indictment of contemporary journalism at the highest levels. But then what's happened to a lot of the major media, I find just as distressing. It really bothers me.
He is Cliff May, president of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, foreign affairs columnist for the Washington Times as well. Cliff, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.